It's time for the most important part of the week. It is, of course, the indie of the week. And this week's indie, Ben got to choose last week.
I did.
Before I steamrolled over him, going,
no,
not for you. I think you'll find multi-winning Moonstone.
Multi-award-winning Moonstone, yes. But this time, we're going to be having a look at the folks from Enviro Games and their game, which is recently out into the world, called Novus Mallum. So to give you an overview of Enviro first, I think would probably be the best way to do it. So their whole shtick is that they're trying to create games that are environmentally friendly, or at least as environmentally friendly as they possibly can be.
Are they using plastic?
Well, here's where we dive into this. So all of the components that they have within their game box for Novus Mallum are sort of card or paper or wood. So it's all stuff that can easily be replicated. And all that.
What about that stuff that looks plasticky? What's that?
So that's done using Ceocast stuff, which, if you know Ceocast, is also biodegradable and recyclable. Yeah. And they also have gone to great lengths to try and make it so that a lot of the stuff that they create sort of fits into that wheelhouse. So
wait a minute. If it's biodegradable, does that mean if I get my miniatures wet, they just sort of dissolve?
I mean, it's not that biodegradable.
that would be impressive.
Yes.
Oh, so we're still talking like hundreds of years biodegradable.
Well, yeah, to a degree.
What about that? Is that a spray can? Has that got CFs in
it? This is where this particular page and a lot more of the other stuff that they've done goes into more detail, because they obviously know that to some degree they can't make it as environmentally conscious as possible, because you're still going to need paints and brushes and all this kind of thing and whatever. But they're doing as much as they can.
Haven't they missed the point though? Every tabletop game is kind of environmentally friendly, because generally once you're finished using the light and stuff they don't use electric. It's much better than playing video games. It doesn't need a big ass server in Iceland or buried under the sea.
Yes, but there's a lot of
on the other side
industry.
There's a lot of it's a lot of actually making the shit, isn't there?
You know, big factories full of metal and plastic and
It's a point in all that packaging and postage.
Exactly. Yes. So they try and do
ignore
things.
The last 5 minutes of the show.
There we go. So they do things. They do things as locally as possible with sustainable stuff and all that kind of thing. So it all comes from managed forests and all that kind of thing as well. And they also try and work so that anything that they don't use, so anything that comes out miscast or whatever, then goes back into the production process and then is used to make more miniatures, which I think is quite good. This is all sort of culminated in this particular set that you see here, which is the Novus Mallum starter set, which comes with two forces for you to choose from. So it's based in the world that they've kind of developed themselves over a little while, where you can take on the role of either the dwarves or the gnomes, which I thought was quite nice. And to kind of tie into the environmental side of things, there's actually quite an interesting mix between the two factions.
They have dwarves fighting gnomes.
Exactly, yes. And the dwarves are all about progress and metal and all that kind of thing, whereas the gnomes are all about using the natural world and the land, and so you've got that element built into there as well, which I think is quite nice.
Like how they've decided their gnomes are like knees.
Yes. Gnomes.
What's the scale difference between the gnomes and the dwarves?
Well, I haven't. We can have a look at some of the models in a second as well, actually. But you can see here. But as I say, they've built it all up around their own fantasy world. They've built loads of detail into this. There's loads of background. The dwarves and the gnomes are only going to be the first of the miniatures that they do for this as well. In good modern gaming world awesomeness as well, they have made all of the rules available for you to dive in and play online. Well, get your hands on online for free as well. So you just need to get yourself the core rules and everything there. And so yeah, it's all just been put into a big onto their site now for you to dive into and have a look at. So yeah, it's very, very good. One of the nice things about, if we've got the actual, should we have a look at the rules first and then we'll look at the miniatures? So if you go to the actual core rules themselves, they break down quite quickly over a series of like 7 pages, and they've got some quite interesting ways that the game actually works. So it still uses dice and stuff, although you obviously are encouraged to use wooden dice. Or whatever you have in your collection, don't buy new stuff.
Yeah. What if I've got my knuckle bones that I harvested?
Exactly.
Don't ask me where from.
Use those from that person down the road that you didn't like.
You mean that person who was donated to medical science?
Yes,
that one?
Yes.
Once I
shot out of a seat. But But yeah, so the rules themselves are quite cool. They're fairly simple to get your head around, but some of the really nice things that they've added in is that the process of a round is that you allocate activation tokens to different units, and then you have to activate them in that order, but that order carries through in movement, shooting, and combat and magic at the same time. So you have to make a conscious choice at the beginning. This is how I want to structure my turn. This is the order that I want to go into, and so does the opposing player. So you set up and you have to really play a game before you actually dive into the actual mechanics and playing things out as you go each turn, which I think is quite nice. The other thing they've done, which I think is really cool, is that a lot of the resolution for both shooting and melee attacks is very different. So for shooting attacks, you flip a coin or a token, and that dictates whether or not you hit, and then you roll to see damage and all that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. When it comes to close combat, they have a sliding scale of like X beats Y beats Z, etc. as you go down. So if you go to like, I think it's page 13, you'll see like a little bit of a breakdown of that. So when you get into combat, you pair it off a little bit like Middle Earth strategy battle game, where as much as you can, one character is fighting one character. And then what you'll do is that you'll choose a token that you want to use. So say you want to choose, I don't know, block or something, or stab. And then you compare that against the other player. And if you beat them in that sliding scale, then you get to do the hit, etc. Which I think is quite a nice little sort of way of doing things.
Rock, paper, scissors, but with
rocks, paper, scissors, lizard, Spock. Yeah.
Yeah, because you've only got the three there. So crush beats block, block beats stab, stab beats crush.
Yes. Yeah.
And then it circles back round again.
Mm-hmm. Which I think is a really cool. And now you can see the scale of the miniatures, Lloyd. You can see how big the dwarves are to the gnomes. And the gnomes are little tiny wee fellows, as you can see.
Hold on, I wasn't looking. I was looking at rock, paper, and scissors, how they say it in the United States.
They say rock, paper, scissors, doesn't it?
No, I think I call it rock, Rochambeau or something.
Rochambeau.
What?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's right. I'm aware of Rochambeau from the States, and that's where somebody kicks you square in the nuts to see who gets first turn. That's Rochambeau, my friend.
Isn't that Rochambeau?
Oh, maybe. The other thing that's quite nice is because obviously you've got this. They don't need to worry about values effectively for how one character fights against another. A lot of the detail then goes into the characters themselves, so you can actually see if we go to the dwarves unit cards potentially.
Yes, dear.
Look at those. You'll see how the characters work and their specialities with particular weapons and how that works, where they move, and how their abilities then tie into either commanding those around them or just fighting themselves effectively against other people. You'll see how many wounds they have, defense, and all that kind of thing. Defense is the score you need to roll once you have hit in order to do damage. And then obviously the save is what you need to roll to stop a wound from going through. So it's quite a small game, quite a narrative game where you're playing with only maybe a handful of miniatures per side. Fighting out very narrative scenarios on the tabletop. But I think this gives them lots of real scope to kind of expand things out and change things as they go through and add new factions in, because you're not having to deal with the equivalent of a stat line anymore. You can just have real fun with the abilities and how that works, because then everything is tied back into those core mechanics, which I think is quite nice. But yeah, looking quite fun as a game to maybe try out and have some fun with, especially with the kind of back and forth and the bidding and stuff like that.
I was trying to work out what combat specialty did. You modify wound rules by +1. Yes. So if you're
encouraged to go with crush to try and get the bing, but if the player knows that if you have crush, that's what you're going to go for, then they might go for a different token to try and beat you and all that.
So being shot up by crossbow bolts from a stabbery unit of dwarf guardians means they're more likely to wound you if they get through, but therefore you'll go, well, I'll try and preempt your stabbery with my own blockery, crushery, whatever one it was.
But yeah, so as I say, all the rules are available online for free, so you can download and get the core rules and all of the bits and pieces for them as well. So if you have some miniatures in your collection already that you want to maybe play around with and use, then you could always start out with that and then maybe come back and check out the miniatures that they've been doing. Yeah, if you go over to the store now, Jerry,
yes, dear,
have a look at some of the you'll see some of the fun miniatures that they've been doing. So as I say, they only have the dwarves and the gnomes at the moment, but you can get them as individual miniatures, as you can see there. All of them are CO cast, mounted on MDF bases. So great stuff. I've seen a couple of people painting these up, and they have the familiar pitfalls of Seocast, which is that they come in a material that's a little bit harder to clean up and all that kind of thing, but there's no less detail in the miniatures. It's just they're a little bit more of an effort to get rid of things like mold lines.
To be fair, from most people I see on the internet, nobody cares about mold lines except me.
Anyway. Yes, that's true.
They don't clean
them. You're the only person zooming in on people's miniatures to find mold lines. Very true.
If you are going to do it, just use graded sandpaper.
Yes. That's actually one of the recommendations that has been used in some of the videos I've been watching. So, yeah.
But why, Jerry? You can barely see.
I can see a mold line. I can see a mold line from a mile away.
Reading
Fear
text, no, but mold lines, yes.
I mean, can you see the issue with his axe there? Because I can't not see that right there. There's a little blip there and a blip above it there that both need to be filed down.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Those, I can't not see those.
Yeah.
They stick out at me like a sore thumb.
But yeah, so they've got miniatures for the two leaders. So you've got Kragner and Zizka, who are the two leaders, but then you've got all the individual miniatures as well. So if you want to get yourself some more hammers or guardians, or the hunters and the skirmishers, you've got those options there as well, which I think is quite nice.
He's a really fun dwarf leader, to be fair. I like him.
I like the two-tone beard look.
Yeah.
The grey and the ginger. I think that's very cool.
There's nothing wrong with the two-tone beard look, bitch.
They don't have gnome hats.
No, they don't. They don't have big heads.
They're not garden gnomes.
Oh.
They're not gnomes de jardin.
What? They're just little blue avatars.
They're Smurfs.
Yeah.
You're being attacked by an army of Smurfs coming out of Smurf village, smurfing away.
I don't think so. Smurfs have hats.
And then they hang your smurfing entrails in the smurfing trees as a warning to all the other smurfing dwarves.
Oh my god, how did you know the lore to Novus Mallum?
I like it. I like the idea of, even if you don't go for the miniatures, the fact that you can just plow in and start playing the game. With your own bits and pieces is nice as well.
I like the idea of being a human and plowing into the middle of it and putting one hand on his head and one hand on their head and having them swinging at each other and nothing happening.
That only works if they're attempting to punch. If they're swinging any sort of weapon, you're going to say goodbye to your kneecaps.
Oh, dear. Yeah.
Good times. Good times are had by all.
I will also say...
But then that's what Jerry feels like when he walks into the office. Little tiny guy there. Little tiny guy there.
I would also say, if you want to go in and get yourself a kind of starter set, they do also do that as well. So they have the Novus Mallum, a new evil set, which comes with loads of the characters and then all of the miniatures that you'll need for both sides, alongside the rule book and the tokens and everything else as well. So all the tokens that we were looking at in the rules there for like stab and crush and all that kind of thing are included in there, all etched detail, which is very nice, alongside the lovely cardboard packaging and everything as well. So it all looks very nice. Once you've got it all set up and ready to go, dive in and play and have some fun.
The great thing is, if the game takes off, it'll not be long before there's third parties producing all those tokens in plastic.
Yep.
That is correct. We can't argue that. I'm hoping to have mine all made out of turtle shell and ivory. I've got a guy. Mum's the word.
Novus Mallum, everyone.
Right. I think it's time to take a look at some news.